Hip Hop Planet. I remember when I first heard rap. I was at a party in Harlem in 1980. Somebody put a record on the turntable, which drew people onto the dance floor. It made me a jazz lover cringe. The same four bars looped over and over. On top of this loop, a guy rammed about how he was the best disc jockey in the world. It was called Rapper's Delight by a rap group called the Sugar Hill Gang. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. For the next 26 years, I avoided that music. I heard it pounding out of cars and alleys from Paris to Abidjan. That I never listened. It came out of bomb buses from Johannesburg to Oscar that I pretended not to hear. In doing so, I missed the most important cultural event of my lifetime. Not since the arrival of jazz in the 1930s has American music exploded across the world with such force. Not since the Beatles invaded America has a music crushed against the world with such impact. These defiant cultures of song, graffiti, and dance, collectively known as hip hop, has permeated every society it has touched. In Brazil, rap is nearly as popular as samba. In China, teens spray paint graffiti on the red world. Its structure is unique, complex, and at times well bewildering bewildering. Whatever music it is becomes part of its vocabulary. It is music that defies definition, that defies our society. To many of my generation, despite all attempts to exploit it, clarify it, and analyze it, hip hop remains an enigma. It is the music of race and class, and for that reason, it is full of people who claim to know the facts when the reality of race is dependent on time, place, circumstance, and who's telling the history. Here's a real story. In the mid 1970s, New York City has nearly broke. The public school system was forced to cut art funding. Gone were the days when you could walk into the bathroom, rent an instrument for a small fee, and go home to play it. The kids of the South Bronx and Harlem used to making do with what they had, improvised. In the summer of 1973, a black teenager named Afrika Bambaataa set up a speaker in his mother's living room window, ran a wire to the turntable in his bedroom, and set a neighborhood alight with party music. At the same time, a Jamaican teenager named Kool DJ Herc was starting up in the scenes in the East Bronx, while a technical witch named Grandmaster Flash was doing the same a couple of miles south. The Bronx became a music center of Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans, Dominicans, and Black Americans. These early pioneers who together to do battle, dance, trade drums, check out each other records and equipment, not knowing that they was writing musical history. Among them was a man named Luke Bergstacke, who was charged to use the phrase hip hop between breaks to keep time. This is how it worked. A DJ played records on two turntables. Someone else served as a master of ceremonies or MC. DJs moved the record back and forth under the needle to create a scratch or to drop the needle on the record where the beat was the hottest, playing the break over and over. MCs dropped over the music to keep the party going. Dance styles were created. In fact, the focus initially was not on the MC, but on the dancers. Radio stations ignored it, so DJ shows mixtapes out of their cars. Rapper's Delight made its way onto the radio in 1979. That is short history. Here is the long history. Spoken word music made its way to the U.S. on slaver ships centuries ago. Hip-hop roots can be traced to dance, drum, and songs of these West African storytellers. The painful journey of slavery manifested it in its pairing of words and music. The spiritual music of early slaves drew on common elements of American music, of African music, such as call and response, the verbal duos, rhymes, and stories of black outsmarting white were defensive, empowering strategies. After 26 years, I have come to embrace this music. Hip hop culture is not mine, that I own it. Much of it I hate, and that I love it. The good of it, to confess a love for a music that, at least in part, embraces violence isn't an easy thing to do. At its best, hip hop speaks to a lost and angry youth, a youth living in a world where 2% of the Earth's adult population owns more than 50% of its household wealth. This music that first explodes to the inner culture of Americans' greatest social problem, its legacy of slavery, has taken its message and its dream to the world.